Hey friends, I am so excited because I would have never guessed I'd be making this video when I started my YouTube channel. Well, today we have a kind of collab, or at least permission, from the YouTuber Tadashi Mori, which many of you will know. And he has given us permission to use his two recent dragon designs for this video. In fact, he left a comment asking if I could explain, especially for this one, how I did it. So that is today's video. It is kind of a dream come true. I started origami based off of Tadashi's videos, and I'm sure many of you have as well. So yeah, I am super excited. Now, what is this video going to be about? So this is custom shaping, and this video is geared more towards beginner and intermediate folders looking to improve their shaping skill set. A lot of more advanced folders can also take some techniques out of this to shape their complex models. However, for the super complex shapers and stuff, you guys probably already know all of this, but feel free to hang out and maybe you'll learn something new as well, or find a way to explain it to other people. But yeah, we have two models here. These are both designed by Tadashi Mori. Once again, thank you, Tadashi Mori, for giving me permission to use both your Pocket Dragon and your Darkness Dragon version 3 in this video. Now, there is a version 3.2. This is the version 3.1, I believe, or 3.0. That was from the crease pattern on Tadashi's Instagram. So it's going to be a little bit different than the most recent model. But we are going to be talking about custom shaping, and what does that mean? All right, so what do I mean by custom shaping? And there's many terms for this, but essentially you can think of it as any kind of shaping you add to the model, either as you fold it or after you fold it, where it doesn't change the model you're folding, but it can potentially elevate some of the structures to change it from just following the instructions to giving it a little bit more personality or even some structural changes. And so the reason custom shaping is an important skill is you can fold the same model over and over and over again and get a different result every time. And by doing so, one, you'll learn how to apply different folding techniques, as well as start to get the baseline skills you need to design your own origami. So it's not exactly the realm of designing, but it is a foundation you need to be able to design. Because when you design, you're going to be folding up to a base, and then you'll have to figure out how to render that base into your finished design. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here. I love this Pocket Dragon design because you can tell from this one, it can be folded with printer paper. That is such an amazing dragon design to be able to do so, where the paper doesn't explode. However, if you decide to use a more advanced paper like this, I believe this is Aqua Papel, you can elevate it a little bit further and try getting some extra stuff for the dragon without changing the, I guess, essence of the Pocket Dragon. So you can see both of these are the same design. This one's not like overshaped to the point where you can't tell what design it is, but you might be able to already see some differences, and that is what I'm going to talk about, and talk about how I achieved that. Let's jump into it. So there are two techniques I'm going to talk about today, and one of them is adding features while folding the model, and the other one will be adding features after folding the model. So you can see here, this is actually 18 minutes and 18 seconds into the Pocket Dragon tutorial, I think. So if you want to follow along, fold up to there so we can try this one. And then over here, I actually just have the head of the Pocket Dragon. And the technique I'm going to show is actually very similar to the one I used for the Darkness Dragon. And this happens, yeah, pretty much after you fold the whole model. Maybe not all of it yet. Like you can see, I haven't done this transition yet, but when the head is fully collapsed, basically. And using what we have instead of adding to it. But let's start with this one. So you might have seen a little bit already of what we have going on here. So in the instructions, right, when we fold the legs, we split it into fourths, I guess, these divisions. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. And then you can already kind of see a sneak preview that on this side of the model, I've actually divided it even further. So I took this flap right here and basically folded it in half and did a sync fold to get another division of 4 pleats. And so when you do that on both sides, it'll go from 4 pleats to 8 pleats. Now, what does that do for us? Let's take a look at this one. And this one, I actually only did this technique here to the tail. And the tail is a split point tail versus the normal pocket dragon just being a single point tail. And so this is like a very small detail, but it just adds a little bit of flair. And for the most part, it was mainly just fun to add. So, you know, if you folded a bunch of these and just want to spice it up a little bit, kind of a pointed tail like this is pretty cool. And it's a lot easier to do when you have multiple pleats like this. But that's more of an advanced discussion later to actually do that. But just getting these pleats down opens up the opportunity for us to try things such as this. Now, how does this actually work? So I prepared what it looks like on the inside in 4 different quadrants for the 4 different stages. So first of all, this is like the most normal of what you would have if you just folded the regular pocket dragon. And you can see I drew in the lines for a reverse fold. And so you can see here on the left, this is the reverse fold, right? And what I wanted to show here is that because this area is basically a pleat, right? If I flip it around, this pleat turns into the feet. But it goes through both sides. So on this side, normally we don't touch it, like here. But we can. We can actually put a full reverse fold into here at 45-degree angles. And anytime there is a sequence of pleats like this, where we have a pleat on this side, and then what I would call a 1-unit pleat on going this way, or basically it's the same width as the vertical and horizontal, that enables us to do this reverse fold. We can transition it or level shift it into a division like so. So from here, this is where you can see the full division into another 4 pleats. And then you can see what the creases look like on this side, right? So we took the reverse fold, and the resultant here is basically just an open sync, right? It actually doesn't look too complex compared to maybe this side. But the way origami goes, in short, is we're allowed to do this. If I tried to divide this one even further, it's possible, but it'd be really tricky. And then these outside ones, I'd have a really hard time doing it just from this 1 unit. But at least dividing it once by half works really well. So doing this on both sides is what enabled us to have a lot more layers here with the point sticking out. And why did I do this? I actually noticed that in the tutorial, Tadashi will fold this layer in half anyways to thin out the tail. And so folding it in half over all the layers is pretty much the same thing as doing the sync fold and dividing the layers structurally. So when you do this modification, it actually won't look any different than if you folded it the regular way. It just gives you this amount of extra space with pleats to create another flap like we did here. Now, something important to know when you're doing modifications like this, it is really fun to try out. It's kind of more upper intermediate to try, but it doesn't always work out. So let me explain to you an example of where doing something like this doesn't work so well. All right, so here is an example of where this technique didn't work so well. This is a much larger fold of both of these. And this time I did the division on the tail like normal. And I also did the division on the head. And doing the division on the head made this one actually turn out worse than this one, which I kept the head the same. And the reason is because of proportions. When naturally, this is actually a really good set, 4 pleats for a head similar to here. But doing the 8 pleats caused the face to be really small compared to the rest of the body. It gave us really large horns, which is cool, but the head was way too small. And so this is where doing a modification like this actually takes away from the model instead of helps it out, you know, instead of elevating it. However, our tail is pretty cool here. You can see this is more of a blown out view of the split. Now, doing something like this is really fun to try, and I actually learned something from making this example, which will tie into why I want you guys to try doing custom shaping like this. After folding this, and I actually did this in a live stream before, so people got to see me kind of discover it, I noticed that, hey, this structure for the head is very similar to the Darkness Dragon version 2. And kind of as a joke and for fun, I told the viewers, what if I just make the Darkness Dragon version 2 head on the Pocket Dragon body? Now, the pleats don't line up. So when I divided this into 8 pleats, this was actually too much. If you go and look at the Darkness Dragon version 2 crease pattern, you'll notice the head is made up of 6 pleats going together. And that gets the correct proportions. So can we do 6 pleats instead of 8 pleats? We can, and let me show you what that would look like. All right, so the modification actually is around 15 minutes of the Pocket Dragon tutorial. And this isn't exactly what it'll look like. I just folded a quick example. But basically in step 15, normally you would fold these up like this, right? Before starting on the legs. However, what we're going to do instead is instead of folding this in quarters, we're going to do thirds, right? And if we do thirds, then when we do the other division, it's going to become sixths. So, you know, I know thirds aren't everyone's favorites, but I recommend you just practice thirds because they come in very handy with things like this. As you can see, I am kind of just freehanding the thirds, but it's going to be pretty accurate, or accurate enough at least for this example. Right, so I've heard to do thirds, just like that. And I open it up. Now we have thirds, and if I were to do on the other side, it'd be the same thing. This side would become the legs. And the legs would work the same way, except you would probably do a couple more divisions. And the legs actually might be longer, which is really nice. And then on this side, which is just like our other example here, except I inverted the colors a little bit on accident. Right, we could do our, basically the same thing. It would be like this. Right, and then this time in the middle, it would also have the thirds. And let's just pretend I folded the other creases here. Right, so then we have it all divided up. And we essentially have 12 pleats to work with. And this actually, right, so it's a bit more than the eighths we have here, but it's not like we divide the eighths again into sixteenths. And when we have the amount like this, actually the crease pattern for the Darkness Dragon head would fit in perfectly. And I don't have this completely memorized, but You know, it's something like, I'm not sure, but you can find it on Tadashi Mori's website, or if you folded the Darkness Dragon version 2 before, you'll kind of remember what it looks like. And let me show you the result of what happens when you do something like this. And you get a pocket dragon with the Darkness Dragon version 2 head. And the best part about this is the proportions actually line up a lot better than in the other example I showed. And another thing I noticed, which you might have just noticed, is that using the sixths gives pleats for the head, like we said, but it also gives a fair amount of pleats to do Shukikado's Western Dragon tail. Now this is a little bit more finicky. It's not a perfect lineup, but instead of having just 2 prongs, we have 4 prongs on the tail, which is that's pretty cool, right? That's kind of a nice change. It's a little bit more effective than just 2 prongs. But the overall base of the pocket dragon is the exact same. Now, since we did thirds, we actually have a belly, right, that folds outwards instead of inwards. If you look at the normal pocket dragon, you see how it goes inwards. This actually works really well because it makes like the actual belly. So again, you kind of discover some of these random things as you practice custom shaping techniques. Like I just showed, you run into some either things that don't work or things that work really well. And I think in this case, it worked pretty well. And for those curious, this is tissue foil, or I guess this is sandwich foil, or sandwich paper, which worked out really, really nicely for this pocket dragon. Now, if you've tried the Darkness Dragon version 2 with this paper, it probably didn't turn out as well because it gets thick. But since the pocket dragon can be folded with printer paper, of course it can be done with foil, and the modification for the head is pretty, it's not too complex, so it works with the paper as well. So yeah, this is kind of like the end goal, at least for now, of a quick exploration into custom shaping for this design. I encourage you to look at other designs and try to see, hey, maybe can I implement this technique into it? Or am I able to, do something similar and try to just play around with that and see what you can come up with. And I think as a nice segue where we turned a pocket dragon into a darkness dragon, we can talk about our next technique, which is more related to the darkness dragon than the pocket dragon. All right, so we have our Darkness Dragon version 3 right here, and we still have one of our pocket dragons just to kind of compare. Now you might notice actually that this pocket dragon I made has eyes that are very similar to the Darkness Dragon already. And I really like this technique that Tadashi taught in his original Darkness Dragon version 2 tutorial because it just requires 1 flap. However, if you take a look at our pocket dragon head, we only have 2 flaps. So boys, how did I get a 3rd flap? Now, this ties in with the Darkness Dragon version 3 because I saw the picture of Tadashi's where in version 3, the snout is a little bit more pushed in and Tadashi actually has teeth. Now, from the crease pattern, I didn't exactly know how he folded in the teeth, but I did know this technique I'm about to show you, which I could like basically mimic the teeth structure, even though it's not fully correct. And I think I got a couple extra teeth in there. Let me try to give you guys a little view. Right, so we have like 3 or 4 teeth actually. They're not the cleanest, but they're there. And yeah, the technique on here is the same that I used to get the snout on this pocket dragon, which I will explain to you here. All right, so the technique that I'm going to show you is called a point split, and it's, that's a pretty self-descriptive name, but we're going to take this point and we're going to split it. Now there's a lot of ways to do point splits, And this is probably the most generic one. Probably not the best one, but at least in my brain, I know I can pretty much always do it. And all it really requires is you to sync fold this corner in a little bit. And so for here, I'm actually just going to sync fold about a third, and I'm just doing a right about there fold, because one of the edges of our sync fold is going to come out to here, and that's about how long we want our snout. And this isn't perfect, so it kind of depends, but hopefully you guys can see this. It's a little bit small, but I think you get the concept. Just did a little valley fold, and now we're going to sync fold this corner in. And I know this sync fold might scare a lot of people, but you kind of just have to unfold most of the model to get the sync fold done. And there's a lot of layers, so practicing sync folds like this is actually a pretty good way to practice other sync folds, which will become way easier as time goes on. But you do want to try to get it as clean as possible, or at least pretty much the edges as clean as possible. Because if the edges are clean, then the center we can kind of remake it after most of the sync is already complete. But there we go. That's our sync fold. And you can see that it did, in fact, shorten our snout. Now here's the trick part of this point split is when we did this, we can actually take the top, or new top, so this is the bottom, and then this is the top of our point split, and kind of valley fold it down as far as possible. And you'll notice that what happens here is the rest of the sync fold spreads out. So let me show that a little bit closer. Right? So now the rest of the sync fold has spread out when we opened it up. And if I just valley fold that spread sync, I guess, in this case, this isn't really the normal spread sync, I guess, but if we then valley fold it back down, right? Now we have a little extra flap, and it is thin, which it'll be proportional to how much you sync folded. Right, so if I wanted it to be even longer, then I would need to sync fold a bit more, but it'll start shortening the distance. So that's what I kind of mean by eyeballing it. But that is how you get an extra flap out of our point. So we turned 1 point into 2. And obviously this is a little bit wider than, something like this. So if you look closely here, I just used some valley folds to thin out the shape of this flap to turn it into a jaw, and then we can use this top flap as the eyes instead of the bottom of the jaw. Right. Now, how do we turn this into teeth? And that is going to be what I did here. Now let's grab a larger paper so I can demonstrate that one. And actually for practice, I'm going to show you how I create this exercise I'm doing, or this example I'm doing. So I know I have a bunch of creases already. Ignore all those. I'm just reusing this Kami. But fold a preliminary base, and then squash fold all the flaps. All right, so we're not making it into a bird base. We're just squashing all the flaps. I can't exactly remember which base this is called. Is this frog base or something? But yeah, I think you guys understand what's happening. Blint's frog base? No. That's not. This is, well, you guys have done this before, right? So just squash fold all 4 of these corners in. And we got one more. There you go. And then what this is basically like the jaw. Where's an example? right? So this is like just the bottom jaw. This is really close to the structure that it's made out of. And that most middle points in 22.5 design will be made of, where, you know, everything else going out is a 22.5 degree line, and we have this bottom jaw. So you can think of the top jaw, like if I were to, the top jaw would be up here, and this is the bottom jaw of our dragon. So let's go ahead and do our sync fold now. And again, I'm gonna go a little bit past the third, like right there. I can't exactly remember how far I used on the one I folded, but you can imagine that basically the furthest tooth is where this point will reach. So about there. So I mean, a third is a safe bet. If you were to try to, if you wanted to replicate this on your Darkness Dragon version 3 fold. However, I don't think when this video releases, I don't think Tadashi will have posted his Darkness Dragon version 3 tutorial out yet, but he might. But if you want to solve the crease pattern and try that, then you can use this technique. But we're going to do the sync fold, and this is probably a better view of me doing the sync fold. This is a lot easier since the entire paper is able to be opened. Right, but something like this. Now, when you're doing things like this, I am going to give a little bit of a warning. As you can see, my Darkness Dragon version 3 is made out of a much more advanced paper, and nicer paper than the other pocket dragons. Even I'd say it's a level above foil paper, because foil is a great like intermediate to high intermediate paper, but you really limit yourself later on in complex origami. There are exceptions, right? But at least in commercial sizes, you probably don't want to use it too much for that. All right, but we have our sync fold down. And we can open it, right? And this time we're going to open it up, so we can still imagine that our jaw is like here. And actually, this went a little bit too far. I think the point at where it touches is, or the way that the teeth go, it's like double the length. So let me explain here. So here where I folded the point to, originally, say it was out here, I only folded it to like half of where the teeth are, because then it unfolds again, and then that's where the furthest tooth is. So yeah, on your actual model, it's a very, very small sync fold, unlike what I did here, where this is a really large sync fold. But this will be good to show as an example. Now, this kind of point split is actually used a lot for toes. So what we did for this one right here, right, we just folded back, but if we actually close it up again, what I've seen is actually if you sync fold, you fold this, and then you sync fold this corner in and do that for all the sides, you'll actually get fingers or claws. Now that's a little bit too complicated for what I wanted to do. I just wanted a couple teeth, right? So instead of doing that, instead of reverse or sync folding, we can actually just take these inner flaps and reverse fold them. So I'm going to reverse fold this one down like this. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. Let's just put our sync fold back. All right. So for one, that starts to give us this flap here. But if we do the next row, now you can see this is a point, which can be turned into a tooth. And we can do one more of these reverse folds on this side, and we're going to complete the reverse folds on the other side as well. But yeah, again, you can play around with different things or different folds with this. So if you want to try to get teeth with those sync folds, you can do that as well. It's definitely going to be a little bit more challenging since reverse folds are much easier than doing sync folds. But just from doing this, you can see that we've generated these points here. And we can even use this flap here as extra teeth too. So now when we spread our flap out, which it's going to be a little bit mushed, just to spread the teeth out, right? It's not laying flat here, but we're going to make it lay flat. Like this. Now we have kind of a start to the set of teeth. Right, so these would be like the middle two teeth that I used for the Darkness Dragon. And I believe what you can do actually from here, or what I did do, is I did something where I made mountain folds. So let's lay these flat. I did mountain folds, right, like this. And basically the reason why I'm going to do this mountain fold on both sides is we want those teeth to show up. And to make the teeth show up, we have to make the jaw thinner. This is kind of a rule of thumb, since origami is a subtractive art style for the most part, is to make the teeth look bigger, we have to make everything else look smaller. Right, and then if we push our teeth up, which again, I'm just kind of doing this really fast. You can do this much cleaner than what I'm doing here, but for the purpose of just showing it, let's try this. Oops, this is the wrong way. And I mean, what I'm doing here, it's actually, now that I think about it, it's very similar to the way we make the legs of the pocket dragon, just with a little bit thinner flaps. Right. So these are obviously not clean, but from here, you know, you can shape them out and make them a little bit cleaner. But we already have two teeth from here, and then this flap, again, like I said, this can be done like Tadashi Mori's pocket dragon legs, which if you folded that, it's pretty much the exact same thing you can do to turn these into points. And then now we have 6 teeth, right? So there's, well, there you go. It's a little bit cleaner. Right, so we have 1, 2, and then 3, which this one's kind of mushed, but that's okay. And then again, in the front, we can turn this into teeth as well by just, again, doing the exact same thing like Tadashi's pocket dragon legs. It's actually the same sequence to do that. There we go. And now we have 8 teeth. So 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, and then 4 on the other side. And boom, we have 8 teeth. And that's how I did the teeth for here, which if you folded any other toothed model, normally the teeth are kind of a whole section on their own. But this is a custom shaped version, which the sequence literally just took a, you know, simple sync fold with a couple of reverse folds and some mushing, as well as some, you know, the other two, you just do the legs like the pocket dragon, and boom, 8 teeth. Not bad, right? Not bad at all. So, you know, ideally, maybe if you wanted, you could push the teeth further back into the mouth instead of just have them at the front of the jaw. but I just did them at the front of the jaw here. And that is how I did the teeth for this Darkness Dragon version 3. And the same technique can be applied to any dragon that has this kind of, bottom jaw. So in reality, you could even add it to like the original Darkness Dragon, which has the same jaw here. You could even do it to the top jaw, although I think it would shorten the snout a little bit too much. So that's the only thing you really have to be wary of, is you trade length of the jaw for the teeth. But it is a pretty nifty little move, a nifty custom shaping move, which, again, I recommend you just practice this. It's very applicable for many things. Just doing the sync folds and reverse folds, stretching it as a point split. Get some teeth. These don't have to be teeth. I've seen the point splits with reverse folds turn into like armor for like a torso. There's just a ton of applications for this move. It's definitely more advanced. I did this super fast. Normally you should spend a lot more time on it, but it's pretty cool. But yeah, that is our second tip, I guess, or second trick in this custom shaping. The first was to do, level shifters down. The next was applying point splits. And the third is going to be a little bit different. And so this is more to clean up the model. So this is definitely a more advanced technique, which does require glue or MC for shaping. So this last tip will be advice for more advanced folders who are able to use more advanced papers versus, say, an intermediate paper. But how to clean up your folds. And when I say clean up, it's more of, you don't have to fold it clean. You can fold clean and have a messy or incomplete looking model. And you can fold messy and have a rendered out looking model, which is kind of what I have here. I mean, I didn't really fold that messy, but you'll see when I explain. All right, and so let's take a quick analysis between the difference of these two models. This is a pocket dragon with a Darkness Dragon head modifications. So it's like, it's fairly complicated compared to this one. This one's got a little bit more advanced structures, right? It's got toes. That makes it actually a lot more complex, as well as, in general, like a longer tail and head, just built into the design here versus the pocket dragon. This is also an unryu paper or a mulberry paper versus foil paper. So the foil, even though it's really good at shaping, we have all of these exposed layers showing on the top. And no matter how thin you push in that foil, you can even glue the foil, but you'll still see some of these layers. I don't really recommend gluing foil. It doesn't really need it, but if you were to, right, that's what would happen. Now for the unryu, normally it would have a lot of layers as well. Unryu is softer, and even if you treat it, it's going to show all those layers. However, it is thin and compressible, and that is the thing I used with this paper to create this spine. So thin and compressible is this feature about this paper, which allows me to do this when wet shaping it. Now, obviously, there's all these pleats added as well, which, a lot of super advanced shapers, they'll do other things with this. We're not really talking about those pleats. We're just talking about this spine on top. How did I do this? And all it really is, which is very simple, but instead of showing all the layers on top like here, I glued them together, and then the outermost ones I glued and stretched a little bit on top of all those layers. However, I didn't glue all the way through the layer. I only glued the edges here. And what that allows me to do is once it's glued, I can pinch it like this and use my finger underneath and just use massaging of the paper to create this 3D texture with a crease, which isn't really a full crease, all the way through the spine, and that creates that spine. Same thing on top here. Exact same technique, where even if I hold it close, I was trying to find a view where you could see all the layers, but you really can't because they're mostly just hidden in between these lines, and that hides a lot of the messiness that you don't really want with a complex fold like this. And for being such a simple, I guess, trick, it does a lot for the model, especially when you hold it out from afar. It looks really clean. A lot of people complimented that it looks really clean, even though, I wouldn't call this very clean in my book. But yeah, that is kind of more of an advanced shaping technique to use with more advanced papers. And so I see a lot of folders not doing things like this. They shape their model, use glue, but they leave all the layers exposed. And that makes it a little bit more messy. Like even this, well, I mean, I didn't use glue on this one, but if you do something this complex and you want to shape it in this way, you want to make sure you have intentionality with a lot of the layers exposed. So I recommend trying this out. This is a little bit different than this isn't really like custom shaping, I guess, but it kind of is in a sense. But it's a little trick for some of you more advanced folders to just level up your shaping ability a little bit. If we were to do a full analysis on why you would want something like this is, again, I fully shaped out the toes, I fully shaped out the head, I added teeth, I thinned out the wings, and so if I left all the layers exposed, it would just ruin the whole vibe of the model. And so yeah, don't leave those ones exposed, close them up, wet fold it, wet shape it, get a nice curve of the wings, and that will make your model look a lot more finished as an origami piece than if you left it without. But yeah, that wraps up this video, guys. I kind of ranted for quite a while, so hopefully you learned something from there. Again, this isn't the ultimate shaping guide or anything. This is just some tips that I applied that I think might be helpful for you. Definitely try it out with the Pocket Dragon. It's such an amazing design. You can fold it very quickly, so you can make a whole bunch of these and practice. And even with Kami, it's very good to practice. And then if you have a fancier paper, you can level it up with some more custom shaping. But yeah, I hope that helps out some of you guys. I hope it demystifies how I did the teeth on the Darkness Dragon. Where is that example here, right? With point splits. Try these things out. If you try them, maybe make an Instagram story, tag me in it so I can check it out, see what you guys are doing. If you have more questions on some of these structures, or if you're doing it correctly, feel free to message me and I'll try to answer. But yeah, I hope overall you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, shout out to Tadashi Mori for allowing me to use his designs, his absolutely amazing designs in this video. Yeah, I hope you guys have a fun time folding, and I'll see you in the next video.
All this origami, all this origami, all this origami got me going kamikaze now.